I recently received a question about Renesans Mars Bordeaux on how it compares with Venetian Red. So I thought the question warranted a video on two PR101 pigments. It offered an occasion for me to take out my Daniel Smith Venetian Red watercolor paint. This video will only focus on these two PR101 based paints. It is not designed to be a PR101 pigment primer. My main goal is to effectively demonstrate the similarities and differences of these two paints and explore where they intersect as PR101 based watercolor paints. There's a lot to cover, from mass tones to wet on wet to glazing and lifting to salt reaction. We'll explore both watercolors for better color appreciation. But first, let's talk about our paper for today. As always, I'm using a 300 GSM 100% cotton cold press watercolor paper. Using an artist tape, I created a layout here to showcase both colors. Top part is for Renesans Mars Bordeaux, the bottom part is for Daniel Smith's Venetian Red. Now let's take a quick look at our brushes. I get a lot of questions about these brushes. Our main brush will be from the Vinci Series 418 Quill brush in size 2. I will be using this modeler brush from Princeton as well. And this Escoda Reserva size 2 will be perfect for our lifting technique. Everything is ready, so let's get started. Straight on wet on dry, I'm going in with Mars Bordeaux. It is semi-opaque with an earthy red-brown appearance. The warm intensity is undeniable, and it makes it great for autumn-inspired paintings and applications similar to Caput Mortuum or transparent red oxide. Unlike Mars Bordeaux, Venetian Red is an opaque watercolor. It's a velvety matte, reddish-brown, PR101 based watercolor paint as well. Venetian Red is granulating and medium staining. More on this later. Let's do some wet on wet. Using a modeler brush, let's brush the surface with clean water before going in with Mars Bordeaux. Sometimes I like to just touch the paper with the tip of the loaded brush just to see some paint movement. Here I'm trying to build some level of paint intensity, especially towards the bottom. This way also, I'm given a window on the watercolor's tonal values. Of course, we'll follow the same process for Venetian Red. Look at that explosion. The paint enthusiastically disperses as it kisses the moistened surface. Let's leave a small gap at the top to observe if the paint will travel toward the edge as the surface dries. The next section is for exploring how these two paints react to salt. Additionally, we'll check how easy or difficult it is to lift the paint from the surface. For this segment, I'm really just using table salt. It'll be interesting to see how this looks like later. And now it's lifting time. To have a better view at this paint's lifting potential, what I intend to do is to pack a lot of color into this. Then I'll let it sit until it reaches at least to a damp state before lifting or taking some color out with an Escoda brush in size 2. For staining watercolor, Mars Bordeaux is really performing well, and lifting is so easy. I don't really have to try so hard, and I recommend having a paper towel with you all the time when you're doing this. This, I have to say though, we're doing this while the paper is at a damp state, so I'm not sure how this will look like on a dry surface. I mean, once the watercolor has dried and you try to do some lifting technique. I will leave that for you to discover or for you to experiment on. I think I've done enough here. I will leave this one to dry for now. We'll repeat the same steps for Venetian Red. First, I will go in with a very light wash, and then maybe we'll add a little bit more because I really need to see how this paint or how Venetian Red reacts to salt. So a little more pigment or paint will help in demonstrating how that looks like. Again, this is just a plain table salt. Let's park that for now and do some lifting test for our Venetian Red paint. Just like what we did earlier with Mars Bordeaux, we'll go in with a very light wash first and perhaps add a little more pigment so we have more to work with. Alright, after a few seconds, it's lifting time. For a medium staining watercolor paint, this one is making me work so hard. As you can see here, I really have to push my brush against the paper, but doing it very gently at the same time just to take some color out. I'm using the small belly of my small brush. However, I don't really like placing a lot of pressure on it. I guess what's happening here is that the paper is still damp and the paint is still not done moving. If you ask me, this is not medium staining, this is a very staining paint. At least based on this, or maybe it's just acting that way because the paper is still damp. Finally, the last part, glazing. So as not to make this a longer video, longer than I had planned, instead of doing an extensive exploration of tonal values, let's settle with 2 layers. This approach will still give us what we're looking for, which is to see how both colors perform when it comes to glazing or creating layers. We'll follow the same method as we did for the previous steps or previous techniques. We'll paint the first layer for Mars Bordeaux, and then we'll do the same for Venetian Red. This is actually a time-intensive process because we have to wait for the first layer to fully dry before we can apply the second layer. To simplify this part, I decided to just glaze the middle part. Just a basic freestyle, not following any format at all. Now that is done, we'll leave this to rest and fully dry. Alright, after 24 hours, we're ready to look at our entire swatch sheet. The mass tone here makes a clear distinction when it comes to how different these two paints are. At first glance, you'll see that Mars Bordeaux is more brown leaning compared to Venetian Red, which is heading towards the red direction. Venetian Red is also more opaque compared to Mars Bordeaux. Through wet on wet, we are able to see the similarities between these two watercolors. If needed, you can really pack a lot of color or build intensity when it comes to Mars Bordeaux, and you could also take advantage of the light washes. For the viewer who asked this question, this is the basis for my response. This top area right here. Venetian Red's lighter tones are identical with the midtones of Mars Bordeaux. I intentionally left that gap there earlier so that I could show what that looks like. Now let's go over these interesting textures. As you can see here, Mars Bordeaux didn't really display that much of a response to salt compared to Venetian Red. Lifting is also easy with Mars Bordeaux. I was able to take out the color with no resistance at all. It wasn't the same with Venetian Red. Overall, both paints allow for lifting. It's just that Venetian Red makes you work harder. When it comes to glazing, these paints, Mars Bordeaux and Venetian Red, are both high performers. They're both professional paints, so I expected a lot from them actually. I could imagine them working well with ultramarine blue, lunar earth, and French ochre. These paints will also work well with nickel yellow azo. Thank you for being here. I hope you enjoyed today's video. If you have questions, please leave them in the comment section down below. Please don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Bye.